I'll go ahead and call our work session to order. I mean, our Urban Renewal Board meeting to order. For our city councilors, I'll just let you know we have a really light meeting agenda tonight, but a more hefty work session. We have purposely kept our council meeting light so that we could engage with questions and comments in the clear and objective audit work session. That said, if there's some questions and comments, we can all go home early. But just when we go through and do the counselor committee reports, I just don't be looking at that clock and thinking we can hang out and have fun. We do have a pretty extensive work session afterwards. With that, here we are at our Urban Renewal Board meeting. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, starting with Board Member Snyder.
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Board Member Maiden. Present. Board Member Smallwood.
Here.
Board Member Sheldon.
He'll be a little late.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
Board Member Exner.
Here.
Board Member Hokinson.
Excused.
And Chair Pulliam.
Here. All right. The first item on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from September 18th. Unless there's discussion or changes, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
I move that we adopt the minutes from the last Urban Renewal Board meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I'll take it. Motion by Board Member Exner, a second by Board Member Maiden. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nays. Motion carries. We've approved the minutes. In old business, here we go. Toll gate in covered structure. Kelly, how are we doing?
Thank you, Chair. So weird calling you Chair.
We're going with it.
Let me share my screen here.
I put
Okay.
it up there.
So if you don't mind, Kelly, probably just give background. Obviously, we've talked to the business owner. This is their approved concept. Or
Yeah. So just to remind everybody, this has come before you in the past. I actually did not attend that meeting, but from my understanding, there was some concern that the proposed covered structure portion, which is in the middle there with the white beams and the black braces, that you were all a little concerned that it didn't mesh well with the existing facility there at the toll gate inn. So what we did is we asked the architect for his input on it. He changed, I guess, the beams and the support posts to white, added a little bit more detail on the picture here so you could see how it would blend. So that's Exhibit A. In addition to that, what I've kind of further recommended is to make sure that they have something like Southern Ledgestone, which is Exhibit B in your packet. That's something you would more commonly see on a building in like New Mexico or Arizona, somewhere where they would have more Western themed actual buildings. Our typical stone that we use on most of these projects is called cultured stone. It's more of a round look. It's something you would see more on Timberline Lodge, and it's more traditional, like a Northwest look. However, if we're looking to keep the toll gate more along the Western theme, consistent with the support post being also white to be consistent with their other colors, I would recommend something like a Southern Ledgestone as the rock to complement that structure. In addition to that, there's just some additional information for your considerations on the staff report. Staff is recommending approval of this, and this would be the last application under the Covered Structures Grant Program, unless someday you decide to open it up again, but this would kind of be the last one. And the cost to the Urban Renewal Agency would be approximately $65,700.
well, we've just enjoyed this program so much. We've kept this last project going as long as we can.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Kelly? Chris?
I just have two. Have we talked to the owner of Tollgate about the additional costs for that Southern stone? Are they agreeable to it?
I think the cost for the Southern Ledgestone would be the same as cultured stone. Yeah, I did let the property owner know, Ron Wasowski, that I'm going to be recommending Southern Ledgestone to you tonight, and he didn't have any
Well-
comments about it.
Well, I guess, I mean, is that really our role though? I mean, because is that stone part of like our style guide or whatever? Or we just kind of say, we like this kind of stone, so you need to go with this kind of stone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if they were just applying for a building and they were trying to just meet the code, they could do either stone, or they could do brick, or they could do any other masonry application that's allowed per the code. I do think since you're giving funding, 80% if you decide to give it, it wouldn't be the first time that the urban renewal agencies actually dictate a little bit further on the specific type of materials. So if you decide to go with what I'm recommending, it's not like it'd be the first time we've done that.
And then I just have one more. It's just that this is a subjective opinion on my part. None of those overhangs have black braces on it across any of the old buildings. I would think we would just paint those white with the columns. They would blend in with all the other posts and pillars that go across. Because right now, those things, at least on that picture, stand out like sore thumbs to me. That's just my opinion, and you guys can take it for what it's worth. Every column of these pillars are all white, except for these brackets are black, and they have them standing out, where nothing else on that whole complex has black standing out on top. I just thought you should just paint.
I'm
them.
glad that they had them stand out so that we could have this conversation though. Yeah.
That's just my opinion. I just want to express it. But thank you for getting the photography of the work. It's way better to see it.
So my opinion on it is I think this is good to go. I think this is a good improvement. As far as the stone goes, I don't know. I feel like I think I'd rather like strongly recommend that we prefer this style of look. But also kind of maybe, if the business owner, I mean, at the end of the day, it's our project within their building, right? And so I think we should leave it at the discretion of the business, as long as they stay within, kind of our style, with a recommendation for this stuff, for this stone. But that's kind of where I'm at on this.
And I get your point, Kelly, with like what you're talking about as far as that ledger stone. But also, I mean, to push back just a little, the toll gate was part of Sandy's history. The actual toll, it slowly crept into town. I think it used to be out toward the zigzag area originally, but so it is part of the Pacific Northwest. So
Yeah, the main reason why I'm recommending it is because I had heard at the last meeting that there was concern that the Sandy style was clashing with the Western theme.
Yep.
And so I was just trying to give you guys an example of what might work.
You're not wrong.
And super appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm okay with it as it is there. I don't think paint it white or leave it black, either one. I
Or even brown. Brown. Cool.
don't know if it comes brown. Does it come brown? Can you
If you're
use
gonna paint it
brown?
white, you can paint it brown.
Well, I kind of make a comment about, the fact that, you've got that, and if you look at an actual picture of it, it's got, Mike's Saloon or something, to Mike's Saloon or something on the right side, and it's just very much, Western saloon style. And so then you have this Cascadian thing in the middle of, it, and so if that's what Ron wants, I go along with it. Painting it white is fine. That helps a whole lot, I think, to kind of tie it in visually. I agree with Chris totally with the black things getting, standing out. Putting, all those little, the little wagon wheels to the left or the little Queen Anne braces on the right, kind of tying those little brackets somewhere in there wouldn't, wouldn't hurt, but I'll just leave it at that. So.
Do we have a motion?
Looking it up.
I move to approve the updated project cost for urban renewal project number 21-010 FAC as proposed in the agenda packet.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. Cool. All right, moving
It's a
ahead.
nice project. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for the work. It's been just a great project overall, good initiative. So, it's good having these up everywhere. Okay, going back to the agenda here, moving ahead to new business, urban renewal financial update. Here come the constraints.
Not necessarily. Don't make it sound so bad.
It's all in millions. That's-
Yeah, there's.
Choices and opportunities.
There you go.
Thank you, Urban Renewal Board Chair. You know, I have a staff report that I prepared for you and a brief presentation. I will, acknowledge it's a little bit dry, not a lot of fluff in there, but I think the intent tonight was just to get some information in front of the board, make sure everyone's on the same page with what our current financial status is there before we go into future conversations about community campus or other activity within the urban renewal district. And so I will keep my delivery of the staff report pretty brief and then open it up for questions to make sure that I can answer anything that the board overall has that they'd like to discuss. So Urban Renewal Agency was initially established in '98 with lots of modifications since then. Current maximum indebtedness is 67 million. Taking into account what we have in the current budget, there's about $31.5 million left to spend over the course of the remaining life of the renewal district, which is about 2048 when we think it's going to sunset. That could change slightly depending on property tax collections and if there's additional growth in the district and that sort of thing. But our best projection right now is 2048. The most recent bond issuance that we did was in 2017. That was done to acquire the old Cedar Ridge Middle School property. Had about $3 million left over for site improvements, which we're using now to build the park. And then there was some funding in that issuance to pay for a significant portion of fire district renovation. And so since then, we haven't really done anything major, right? We've done some grant programs on the covered structure, but we haven't done that big sort of urban renewal project until the park that we're currently working on right now. Current budget has 6.1 million in capital budgeted. 6 million is for the park, $1 million for minor upgrades at City Hall. We don't have a specific plan for those minor upgrades, but we have a lot of space needs here. We have some other things that need to be remedied, a leaking roof in one area that has just been modified and repaired, thankfully. It took quite some time. I think the entire time I've been here, we've had a leaking roof, so that's finally not leaking today with all this rain, so that's exciting news. But the important thing to note is that we could go and get another $9 million through a bond right now. It'll take about 6 months to go through that process, but we have the ability to go and get about $9 million. We have $2.5 million in contingency. I think from a financial standpoint, keeping 1 or 1.5 million in contingency is a wise choice for other future spending and other projects that might pop up. So
that's separate.
that's separate. Yes,
It's not part of the 9.5.
correct. So we could go and spend, you could borrow 9 million and take 1.5 million out of contingency and have about 10.5 million or so to spend on a project or a variety of projects.
Yep, that just to clarify.
Oh, thank you. I forgot that I had a PowerPoint.
You want me to go ahead and do it?
That's great.
Okay.
Well, you've had a PowerPoint?
I made a PowerPoint that I didn't present on PowerPoint. I just started talking. Thanks, Jeff.
You've got it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, you already had it up?
Yeah,
That's
I
great. That's
I
great.
reviewed it earlier.
I like it.
I'm sorry, Paul, did you
Yeah.
have a
Do
question?
you want to ask questions now? Or
Sure,
after?
no, questions now are fine.
Well, like, on the first one, we have 28.5 million spent or reserved today. So I'm trying to, like looking at, okay, we purchased the thing, we
Yep.
did the fire station, we did, I assume that's including the 6 million on the park and all that.
So
How do we get to 28?
yeah, the 28.5 is a combination of actual expenditures plus 1.4 million that's still allocated to the fire district from the initial urban renewal agreement that we had. So I guess it's technically 27.1 that's been spent, 1.4 that's reserved. And then we have the 7 million that's allocated in the existing budget, 6 million of which is
It's like debt
the park.
service and.
Debt service doesn't count towards the maximum debt. Service. You count the capital expenditure, not the loan
Yeah.
you're paying. But 6 million of that 7 is the park.
But
The
the
other-
28 includes the 7 million allocated, right?
It does not.
Oh,
No. So you're gonna have 67 million total minus 28.5 minus 7 gets you to the 31.5 that's remaining.
I figure out how we spent 28 million without.
So the district's been around for what, 24 years now. That's a combination of the staff expenditures in administering the district. That's a combination of the funds that we use to acquire the property over there, the significant amount of undergrounding expenditures that were incurred, facade programs.
We spent a bunch of money on Proctor.
But it's
sidewalks.
full
Yep.
24.
The sidewalks and the
Yeah.
utility
I mean, I looked
underground.
at some of the budget stuff prior, but yeah.
I have it broken down by year in a different document.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just interesting.
Yeah, it is, I just assume that 20 includes, so.
No, it does not. So we have the 31.5 remaining. You could theoretically spend, 10 million dollars in 6 months if we went out and got that $9 million bond. But the important takeaway here, well, before I get to the important takeaway, it's important to remember that urban renewal doesn't create a new tax. It's redistributing money that's in our current taxing districts. Question that we get a lot at City Hall, especially this time of year when property tax statements go out. Why am I paying money for urban renewal? I'm not in the district. What is this? And so there's a lot of education that we try to do when we get those phone calls about how even when the district does sunset, your taxes are not going to change. That money's going to be
Right.
reallocated to all the other taxing districts within this area.
But that money that we're having to pay back every year, it's like $900,000 or something. That's paying the 28 million or the 31 million,
That's paying the $10 million bond that was issued in 2017.
and that's part of the 28 million.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna scroll, sorry. Fingers on your computer. Already talked about the budget, oh no, I'm sorry. So beginning balance, we have $300,000 more going into this budget cycle than we thought we were going to have. Part of that's two reasons. One, we didn't have some of the expenditures that we thought at the end of last biennium. Tollgate's a good example of that. We thought that project was gonna get wrapped up several months ago and it didn't. And so that's accounted for in that 300,000. We also had some additional property tax collections that occurred last fiscal year that we didn't have built into this budget. So we're coming in a stronger position than we thought we would. We have the 2.5 million in contingency, and then we already talked about what the budget includes. That should say now in revenue sharing, not no in revenue sharing. And we talked a little bit about this in the budget process. It's a very deep dive into urban renewal that will totally derail this conversation. But the takeaway from revenue sharing is that because we have reached certain thresholds, ORS mandates that we share some of our success. And so we're only keeping 25% of the additional growth right now, and 75% is shared with all the other taxing districts or taxing agencies within our district.
Some of them are pretty small.
Is there any tricks to be able to
The trick
do
is
more of it?
the trick is getting development within the urban renewal district. So the higher the value of the urban renewal district becomes, we'll still only get 25%, maybe 25% of a bigger number, so you get more money.
So like the county owns this clinic over here, would they be able to put money into that in their share? Since they now have,
Well, the county doesn't pay property taxes, so that doesn't help us.
but you're saying though that they get a percentage of that, because the county.
Oh,
is-
yeah, the county, the fire district,
Right,
Fort
School district.
Portland. School district is made whole on a per pupil basis from the Oregon Department of Education, so the school district's a little bit different. But fire district, Port of Portland, Clackamas County, library district, vector control, Clackamas soil and water conservation, and there's one other one that I'm forgetting now, but some of those are very small, like $17 share of the increase that they got.
So, but we also said that we were gonna make fire folks whole, right? And so that 25-75 share now, is that in addition, or are they kind of, I don't wanna say dump dipping, but you know what I mean? Are they getting the 75% and we already made
The
them
fire
whole?
district, per the original agreement from 1999, said they get 10% of our maximum indebtedness, which would be a total of 6.7 million from our property tax collections. So, I suppose in a way that's double dipping. It's a bad term. I don't want to.
Yeah,
There's
but
nothing
we fatten the
wrong
pie
with it.
for them to make it more palatable as a partner.
exactly.
But I mean, going forward with the 75%,
They're-
now that we've reached the thing, is their share being paid out of the 75% now?
No, because they get that 10% of the total maximum indebtedness, not specific to a revenue sharing or property tax generated amount. They just over the course of the district will get 6.7 million. They could come and ask tomorrow for another 1.4, and then we have met all of your expenditure required or all of our obligations, and we wouldn't have to have that conversation again, or they could wait 5 years and come and ask for 1.4. Ultimately, the urban renewal board has to make that decision of when they have the funds to allocate it out, but there's still.
But they're getting
1.4
some of
on
that
the table.
75%,
They are.
right?
And so is the city of Cindy.
So you may take this through this here. I see coming up next is the borrowing capacity.
Yep.
But so are you gonna take us through if we did took out 9.5 million, what that would mean as we pay down that? Okay.
Yeah, and if you want to get into the weeds, I can pull up a really detailed spreadsheet, or I can just.
We'll
talk
see
about
what you
that
tell, we'll
means.
see what you
Okay.
tell us.
Well, the 9 million available in loan, we already have that money, right?
No,
Or is that
we would
borrowed?
have to go and do a new debt issuance,
Okay.
a new bonds. We'd go through the whole process of, having an ordinance that's passed, getting bond counsel, getting a financial advisor on board, and then ultimately issuing to receive
And
those
money's not
funds.
cheap anymore.
Money's not cheap anymore. So when we were here, oh gosh, a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, when we first started talking about community campus specifically and how much money the urban renewal district could get right now, interest rates were like 2.5%, very different market now. We would be in the 5 to 6% range likely on a 15-year repayment schedule. Anything beyond 15, you start seeing the interest rate go up even more. So we'd be maybe in like a 6 to 7% range if we tried to get a 20-year payback.
There's still some folks out of the 70s that would tell you we're doing great.
I know, right?
So, yeah, all right.
So borrowing capacity, we could go and get 9 million right now, 15-year loan, 5%. It would take about 6 months to get those funds. So we're talking summer of 2024 before we'd actually see cash in our bank. Talked about how we could use some of the money in contingencies. We have about $10 million on near-term projects. Ultimately, what that means, and I should, let me start with this. In this model, to get 9 million, that still leaves about $200,000 per year for grant programs. Still pays for the staff that we have that administer the urban renewal district, still pays for our downtown maintenance program that we have. So it keeps things fairly status quo from what the board is used to seeing. Facade grant requests coming through.
But no more major projects.
But no more major projects. We would go and get this $9 million, we'd spend 10, and there would be no major projects for the next at least probably 5 years. And so.
And that's borrowing against the 31.5 million remaining.
Yep.
Okay.
5 years. It's not that. I've been here for 5 years. That's not that long.
It's not that long.
Sometimes it feels long.
Depends on how you-
Figure out.
Yeah.
Now,
That's what I would.
in 5 years,
Yeah.
you couldn't go and get another 10 million. It would be a much
Yes.
smaller borrowing.
But it does accrue as you go through time, because we're improving the
It does.
value of the downtown. all
It
the
does,
time.
but remember, we're in revenue sharing now, so we're not gonna see these years where we start getting $400,000 more in property taxes year over year. We're gonna stay pretty flat, maybe get like a $50,000 increase year over year.
All right.
I got a question.
Yes,
Should I don't know. Can you use bond money to pay off an earlier bond?
we could refinance or refund the existing bond, but we borrowed it as tax exempt, so you can't do that until 10 years after the issuance date.
So
we
if we're
wouldn't-
paying forward on this next bond, that's at 5%, say rates drop in 4 years. We can't refi it to pay it off to have the money back.
I think
or-
technically speaking, you can, but the rates would have to drop so significantly that the fees in which we would pay on refinancing the debt, because we are now voiding the tax exempt status of it, that it would,
Oh, yeah.
the numbers would have to drop like
So
to a
what's,
1% interest rate to make that viable, and I don't think that's gonna happen.
that makes sense, and thanks for explaining that to me.
Yeah.
So what's the risk of waiting? Why do a, hypothetically, why do a 9 million takeout now at 5%? We don't need it, we have the money. We're not gonna do any projects for 5 years. Why not sit on it for 2 years? And when a project comes up, then start that
right.
process.
So
Where rates might be lower.
absolutely,
Well,
I
We're
think
betting
the-
that the rates will go down. They might not go down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good point. That's what I'm
well,
asking.
no, guy, you're right. So
Right.
if I may, and that's kind of where we are now. Is we don't have any major capital projects coming, or immediately in front of us that we've decided to spend it, and so that is really what we're doing. What I'm attempting to do here is, we've provided an update for the community campus subcommittee on some of the homework and research that group is doing to look at cost parameters of a revision of that bunker building into some sort of functionality, right? There's also other properties around town that's come online recently that we're also looking at and doing appraisals of. And my hope is now we're doing our homework on what do we actually have in our piggy bank, right? And then we're gonna get together here in the next 3 weeks or whenever it works out, but to do that urban renewal board retreat that we've been talking about. And at that point, the idea is okay, we've done some investigative homework and some different major ticket items that we can do maybe as an urban renewal board. We don't like any of those ticket items. Maybe to your point, we just continue to sit on it. But this way, at least we now have all the things, or hopefully all the things we need to make some big decisions moving forward.
So in 2 weeks, you're gonna have a conversation about the bunker building. The council will, I don't think that's an urban meeting specifically, but the council's gonna have a conversation about the bunker building. And then to the chair's point, we're gonna try to schedule a project prioritization work session for the urban renewal district as a whole. So I wanted to get the money conversation out of the way now, and get everyone on the same page of how much money we could feasibly get in a short period of time. And if there's no projects that align with that, fantastic, we don't do anything. If there is, then we know here's kind of how much we have to spend and what that means for the future spending over the next 4, 5, 6 years of the district.
Can you clarify that refinancing existing debt, kind of with the discussion that you were having before issuing additional 6 million?
Yeah, so
I understand.
the debt that was issued in 2016, 2017,
10 million.
the 10 million, it's tax exempt, can't refinance it or do anything with it for 10 years. So in 2027, we will have met that 10-year timeline for that tax exempt financing. We would still owe 4 to 5 million on that loan, but we could go and borrow an additional 6 with refinancing the remaining debt that's on that bond. So you're gonna increase
So
your
that's in
over-
addition to the 9 million that we could go get now?
So you'd have another 6 million in 5 years or so. I mean, that's dependent on interest rates, right? So if they stay at 5, that's what it is. If they go up or down, that's gonna fluctuate. 6 million won't do a big project.
Won't
though.
do it, no, it won't. But it
Especially with.
But 6
inflation.
million's the kind of money you can leverage with other funds too, though.
Sure.
right? You know,
Absolutely. And if there's a business that's coming into the urban renewal area that we need to incentivize or work with or whatever, then we would have some money to do that. Or significant repairs on a city facility, if that was, in the discussion of the board. So it's not gonna solve any problems or do one major project on its own, but it would be a good financial incentive matched or paired with other financial incentives from other areas or other agencies or other partners to do a project potentially. And last financial point, really, the borrowing power of the agency is not going to change until the existing debt is paid off or substantial, and I mean substantial development happens in the urban renewal district. Revenue sharing really just keeps our revenues flat, and so getting another 40 or 50,000 a year
when
doesn't
you
buy
say
you a lot of borrowing
when you
power.
say and I mean substantial, are you talking like if it just goes gangbusters over there at Bell Street
Yeah, if
360
we have
second, is that substantial?
That's substantial, yes.
Yeah.
The 1 or 2 vacant land or vacant sites that we have in the downtown core, that's not gonna be substantial
Right,
enough to
sure,
make a significant improvement. It needs to be 50 acres of commercial development that starts really triggering some increased financial tax revenue coming in.
So it doesn't matter what it's zoned as, does, I mean, what gets you the most money? That's where I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, and this question came up and I haven't had a chance to reach out to the county yet as far as like industrial versus commercial versus residential. Commercial is going to bring in more revenue than residential is, or residential would. I don't have an answer on the industrial
Okay,
piece of that question, but residential is not going to generate the revenue that would be needed to incentivize or to increase the.
Not like
the district.
commercial, but
Not like commercial. I have a map. Can you share that map of the district real quick? Yeah. Because this can, I think this will paint a little bit better picture of where you can see development within the district. Everything in blue is the renewal zone. The red line in the upper left is the new Bell 362nd extension. So all of that property over there is within their renewal district.
Mhm.
Or I guess not all of the extension, but the vast majority of it is. So having some commercial development happen in that area would likely be the catalyst for seeing significant property tax collection revenue increase.
So Tyler, why don't you take council through what you were talking to me about several weeks ago now of why we would possibly want to consider a boundary change?
Yeah, so, and we could talk more about this in specific detail at our future work session, but one opportunity, and we need to do some analysis on this, but one opportunity would be restructuring or rezoning the makeup of the urban renewal district. And part of the benefit of that would be acknowledging that some properties have already sort of seen their peak and seen their heyday of urban renewal. We've improved the property. We've done what we needed to do in that zone, and there's not really much left to do. For example, this area east of City Hall, right? We've sort of done what there is to do on all of those properties. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them have been touched by urban renewal in some way, facade improvement, what have you. And so I think strategically, it might also be time to start talking about what are the specific areas of our district that need improvements. What that could mean, and this is why we need to have some financial analysis done, it could change the overall frozen base rate of the district. So our property tax collections for urban renewal might actually decrease by doing that, but you focus and really put your investment in a specific area instead of just saying the entire commercial district of Sandy like we've done. If this,
I remember if that decreases, our general fund increases.
correct,
But we don't have to invest money into properties. We've already invested a bunch of money, right?
correct,
So
no, you don't
taking
have
them
to.
out what would that do to take them out of the urban renewal district?
Exactly what the chair just pointed out, that urban renewal revenue might decrease some by doing that, but the general fund revenue of the city of Sandy would increase. So right now, the
Oh, I see.
general fund
Yeah,
loses around $500,000 a year. Loses is not the right word. Foregoes $500,000 a year in general fund revenue because of the way that the taxing districts are overlaid. So by restructuring the area of the district, you could free up some of those urban renewal dollars to go back into the general fund, use those for other projects, whether it's still reinvesting in city, infrastructure wherever you want it, whether it's in the district or not, or it's other general fund uses. It's additional FTE, it's different additional projects, additional whatever. And that's a whole other budget conversation that we could have. But I think it would be worthwhile to spend a couple $1,000s and have an urban renewal expert. We have a contact that we've used in the past that could just kind of give us some preliminary numbers on if you did rezone, remove this area, maybe you want to extend it over here in a different area, make it a little bit bigger.
When was the last time we've done anything like that?
I don't think we've done an analysis
I
on the
can't remember
boundary
doing it.
in,
Last expansion, I believe, was 2014 or 15, but it was not an analysis.
no, it
Right.
was just an
And
expansion.
but you really think a couple $1,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a $20,000 project. We have a consultant that, charges by the hour. She's sort of the Oregon expert on urban renewal. She'd be more than happy to work with us on that.
But this is kind of a refining of the boundary, maybe dropping some and adding some.
Maybe dropping some, maybe adding some, maybe we
Just
come
looking
back
at
and
it.
say, this is the most flexible that you have and don't do anything.
But we would know.
But we would know.
Yep.
I can run property tax revenue projections all day long. I can't drop this assessed value property out of this, add this, and do those projections. That's a much more, intimately involved analysis that would take a lot of time, and an urban renewal expert would be money well spent to just come in and do that analysis if we needed to have that done or wanted to have that done.
Certainly worth getting a bid to see what that would cost us. I mean, to do the analysis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you can see, almost every property along 26 is in the district, with the exception of a handful east of Fred Meyer. Yeah, I'm not picking out property owners by name or anything like that, but just there's a small area that is not within the district there. Do we really, want the entirety of all those properties around Bell and 362nd to be in the district? Should they all be in the district? Should only part of it be in the district? I think there's just some analysis on what gets us the most bang for our buck, especially now that we're revenue sharing and we're not seeing the growth and success that we had seen previously. our success was so successful that now we're sort of penalized for it, is the way that we talk about it internally.
So that
So-
nine, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So that 9.5 though, that doesn't have to just be for one project though. I mean, we could take out several different, we could do 3 million, 5 million,
Correct.
1 million.
Two
Generally,
200,000 and 300,000 too.
Right.
yeah, generally speaking, you want to have a project list, asking a bank or a financial institution to give you money, right? You need to have a good idea of where that's going to be spent, but it does not have to be an exhaustive list of 7 projects and their dollar amount. It needs to be, I'll use the community campus as an example just for this point that I'm trying to make, right? But we're gonna do $5 million community campus and 2 million in public reinvestment and some other stuff and some property acquisition and leave it at that.
But that's assuming we do all 9.5 at once, but
Right.
could we do, you could go and do it, we could pull several
sure.
different.
For sure.
Yeah.
And if we have a small project that we want to complete or a small property acquisition we want to complete, we have $2.5 million in contingency. So
Sure.
we could go and spend, $1.5 million of that right now. No questions asked. It wouldn't financially impact the district or our financial stability right now. So really, I think the point of this was to get to that number of about 9 million that we could go and.
No, you said 9.5. Now you're at the
It's
9.
9 in the
Taking-
staff report.
Rounding.
And we could spend 1.5 million.
You did say
out of
that.
I feel like you just took from us at the end.
It might be 9.5 depending on,
You're a financial guy. too.
Yeah.
I round up or down to the nearest million depending on how it benefits the
Oh,
conversation.
there you go. Oh, you see that now that you're a city manager.
Yeah, right. I'm doing, what did we call it the other day? Counselor math when we were
Yeah,
rounding.
counselor. Oh, that's right.
I mean, you could spend 10.5 million total right now. 9 of that would be borrowing and 1.5 million out of contingency. But again, this was just setting the stage for 2 weeks from now, and then 2 or 3 weeks after that, when we start talking about potential projects, potential costs, and making sure that we all kind of have a number. So when we start talking about $20 million in projects, I want you all to be thinking about where you're finding the other 10 million, or directing me where I need to find the other 10 million. 'Cause it's not going to be your
Question on lending. So I know when we were doing looking at WIFIA for wastewater and all that, that had terms of you didn't have to start paying down the principal till 15 years or something after the completion of the project.
5 years after the completion.
You went from 9.5 to 9, and now you
And
just took
15
me
to
from
5.
15 to 5. But, all right. I guess are there USDA? Are there really favorable federal or have you even began looking at that process?
For urban renewal specifically, there's really only 2 options. There's tax increment financing, which is essentially here's how much revenue, property tax revenue the district has and brings in. Here's what you can get with that information, or a revenue bond that would essentially be backed by the city of Sandy. You get a little more bang for your buck that way because you have another entity that is backing the urban renewal district, another entity that has a lot of cash, that has good financial standing. So you might be able to buy down your interest rate 0.5% or something if we go that route. That's likely the approach that we would take. I would not recommend that if we had big plans for a general fund bond, because now we're going to have multiple debts backed by the same source of revenue. We don't have a plan for a general revenue bond for the general fund, so I think we'd be fine. That's the existing debt that we have currently was done that way. We got a little bit lower interest rate by using the backing of the city. But there's no 1 or 2% interest rate out there.
Right.
There's no 40-year loan. It's not anything like that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Cool. All right, we'll.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have a question, I just kind of have a comment. I think, for me, what I want to see is, what are the goals that we have in our plan? And then, for each of those goals, what are 1 or 2 possible projects that would get us there? And, what are the pros and cons or biggest bang for the buck type rewards of doing those kind of projects to get those goals met, I guess, are kind of what I'm looking at when we talk about that prioritizing of.
Absolutely.
goals.
A couple of the dates that we had thrown around, and we'll send out a doodle poll this week, but either December 2nd or December 9th, I think, were the two that we were looking at.
You think about a Saturday or?
Thinking about a Saturday, so we're not, going to 11 o'clock at night or something like we would during the week, depending on how robust the conversation is.
Just bring the coffee.
So we're looking at a Saturday in early December and hosting it at the community center. Get us out of this room. And to your point,
There could be a holiday tree in the community center by that time.
we will put a holiday.
How
tree
big? How big? I'm kidding.
About 12 feet.
I'll go for Steve's house.
And then to your point, board member, I was lost for words. I wanted to say counselor. It's not board member Water. We'll talk about the existing projects that are in the urban renewal plan. One of them essentially is complete. A couple of them are probably could be classified as complete, and then there's a few that we haven't really done a whole lot with, and so we can talk more about
Yeah, you should
the
probably,
broader categories and specific projects that are available under those.
probably put in there some of the ones that have been refused. I know we've got a couple of businesses that have said no to certain proposals. Where that might end up, those could be interesting to know what those were too.
And then when we do these building assessments where we quote out like putting more money in the city hall or in the community center, do we look at the parking lots during that process or just the parking lots or just the buildings?
So, City Hall specifically was more building focused. The parking lot is horrible, especially that lower lot. It never gets used because it's horrible. Yeah, that's a great word. Let's just keep throwing that one around. So yes, I mean, there should be some additional forethought in not just the building issues, but also the parking restrictions and constraints that we have with those. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn our urban renewal board meeting, and our council meeting will take off at 7 o'clock. Remember, counselors, brief meeting to jump into that work session on third objective.